The Bering Sea has crushed wooden exploration ships, shattered steel fishing trawlers, and swallowed entire crews without a trace. For centuries, it's been a hunting ground, a geopolitical border, and one of the world's richest yet deadliest fishing zones, all rolled into one. It's where Russian fur traders ventured into the unknown, where crab boats face waves taller than buildings, and where Cold War submarines prowled in frozen silence. Its seabed holds more wrecks than official records account for. Fishing vessels still pass over them, often without knowing what lies just beneath. This isn't just a body of water. It's a witness to colonial expansion, territorial disputes, industrial tragedies, and decades of superpower tension, and it remains just as unforgiving now as it was during the Russian Empire or the height of the Cold War. We're about to look at what makes the Bering Sea one of the most important, dangerous, and heavily exploited seas on the planet. The Bering Sea sits wedged between two continents, bordered by Alaska to the east and Russia's Kamchatka Peninsula and Chukotka to the west. Its southern boundary is defined by the Aleutian Island Chain, a volcanic arc stretching nearly 2,000 kilometers from Alaska toward Russia. In the north, it narrows into the Bering Strait, a passage barely 85 kilometers wide that separates North America from Asia and connects to the Arctic Ocean. It covers an area of approximately 2 million square kilometers, making it one of the largest marginal seas in the world. Despite its remote location, it has an outsized impact on global fisheries, climate systems, and the geopolitical relationship between the United States and Russia. The sea is not uniformly deep. Most of its northern section sits on a vast continental shelf at depths between 50 and 100 meters. The deepest parts lie in the south, particularly the Aleutian Basin, which plunges to around 4,000 meters. These depth differences shape everything from storm intensity to where fishing fleets operate. The Bering Sea is not a uniform body of water. It's a divided and layered system. Two nations split it down the middle into exclusive economic zones. Fishing grounds overlap with migratory routes. Undersea canyons funnel nutrients onto the continental shelf, creating one of the richest marine ecosystems on Earth. It's a sea that has been shaped as much by territorial conflict and industrial ambition as by geology. The Bering Sea has a reputation for brutal conditions, and it's earned it. Storms here aren't occasional, they're constant, especially from October through April. Arctic air from the north collides with warmer Pacific currents in the south, creating violent weather systems. Because much of the northern sea sits on a shallow shelf, it doesn't absorb wave energy the way deep oceans do. Instead, wind-driven waves build fast and hit hard. In severe winter storms, wave heights regularly exceed 15 meters. The Bering Sea sits in the path of some of the most intense, low-pressure systems in the Northern Hemisphere. These systems, combined with strong winds and freezing temperatures, create conditions that can sink ships in minutes. Ice is another factor. Each winter, sea ice extends hundreds of kilometers south from the Arctic, creating a shifting frozen barrier that restricts navigation and adds another layer of danger. The most treacherous areas are in the north and northwest, where shallow waters, ice formation, and unpredictable currents converge. On February 11, 1983, a massive winter storm struck the Bering Sea with sustained winds exceeding 90 miles per hour and waves reaching 12 meters. The storm caught several fishing vessels off guard. The most notable loss was the fishing vessel Americus, which sank with all hands. 6 crew members were lost. Search and rescue operations were hindered by the extreme conditions. It was one of several deadly incidents that year and became a reference point for how quickly the Bering Sea can turn fatal. The storm also damaged multiple other vessels and triggered widespread concern about safety standards in the commercial fishing fleet. In January 2005, another severe storm system moved through the region. The FV Big Valley, a crab fishing vessel, capsized and sank near St. Paul Island in the Pribilofs. 5 crew members died. Only 2 survived after being rescued from a life raft in near-freezing water. The vessel had been fishing for opilio crab during one of the most dangerous seasons. Investigators later found that ice accumulation on the deck and superstructure likely contributed to the capsizing. It was a reminder that even modern steel-hulled vessels are vulnerable to the sea's conditions. The Bering Sea's weather patterns are erratic. Conditions can shift from manageable to life-threatening in hours. Fog, freezing spray, high winds, and near-zero visibility are regular occurrences, particularly in spring and fall. Mariners working in these waters, whether on crab boats, trawlers, or cargo ships, face not just distance, but constant environmental hostility. Satellite forecasting and improved communication have reduced some risks, but the sea's unpredictability remains. Every departure carries weight. Every forecast is taken seriously. The Bering Sea is never routine. Every crossing is a calculated risk. The Bering Sea has a reputation for brutal weather, and it's earned it. Storms here aren't occasional. They're constant, especially from October through April. Arctic air from the north collides with warmer Pacific currents in the south, creating violent weather systems. Because much of the northern sea sits on a shallow shelf, it doesn't absorb wave energy the way deeper oceans do. Instead, wind-driven waves build fast and hit hard. In severe winter storms, wave heights regularly exceed 15 meters. The Bering Sea sits in the path of some of the most intense, low-pressure systems in the northern hemisphere. These systems, combined with strong winds and freezing temperatures, create conditions that can sink ships in minutes. Ice is another factor. Each winter, sea ice extends hundreds of kilometers south from the Arctic, creating a shifting frozen barrier that restricts navigation and adds another layer of danger. The most treacherous areas are in the north and northwest, where shallow waters, ice formation, and unpredictable currents converge. On February 11, 1983, a massive winter storm struck the Bering Sea with sustained winds exceeding 90 miles per hour and waves reaching 12 meters. The storm caught several fishing vessels off guard. The most notable loss was the fishing vessel Americus, which sank with all hands. 6 crew members were lost. Search and rescue operations were hindered by the extreme conditions. It was one of several deadly incidents that year and became a reference point for how quickly the Bering Sea can turn fatal. The storm also damaged multiple other vessels and triggered widespread concern about safety standards in the commercial fishing fleet. In January 2005, another severe storm system moved through the region. The FV Big Valley, a crab fishing vessel, capsized and sank near St. Paul Island in the Pribilofs. 5 crew members died. Only 2 survived after being rescued from a life raft in near-freezing water. The vessel had been fishing for opilio crab during one of the most dangerous seasons. Investigators later found that ice accumulation on the deck and superstructure likely contributed to the capsizing. It was a reminder that even modern steel-hulled vessels are vulnerable to the sea's conditions. The Bering Sea's weather patterns are erratic. Conditions can shift from manageable to life-threatening in hours. Fog, freezing spray, high winds, and near-zero visibility are regular occurrences, particularly in spring and fall. Mariners working in these waters, whether on crab boats, trawlers, or cargo ships, face not just distance, but constant environmental hostility. Satellite forecasting and improved communication have reduced some risks, but the sea's unpredictability remains. Every departure guaranteed, every forecast is taken seriously. The Bering Sea is never routine. Every crossing is a calculated risk. The history of the Bering Sea is inseparable from Russian expansion eastward. In the early 18th century, Russia was pushing its frontier across Siberia toward the Pacific. The driving force was fur, specifically sea otter and fur seal pelts, that commanded extraordinary prices in Chinese markets. Russian fur traders, known as promyshlenniki, moved east through brutal terrain, establishing outposts and extracting pelts with little regard for indigenous populations or sustainability. In 1728, Danish explorer Vitus Bering, sailing under Russian command, became the first European to document the strait that now bears his name. His expedition confirmed that Asia and North America were separated by water. A second expedition in 1741 reached Alaska, and though Bering himself died on the return voyage, his crew brought back sea otter pelts that triggered a fur rush. Within decades, Russian traders had established a presence throughout the Aleutian Islands and coastal Alaska. The Russian-American Company, chartered in 1799, formalized Russian control over Alaska and dominated the fur trade for most of the 19th century. It operated much like the British East India Company, with monopoly rights and quasi-governmental authority. Aleut hunters were forced into servitude, compelled to hunt sea otters and fur seals under Russian supervision. The population of sea otters collapsed. By the mid-1800s, the once vast herds had been hunted to near extinction. Russia's hold on Alaska weakened over time. The fur trade declined as animal populations crashed. The Crimean War drained Russian resources. Administering a distant colony became unsustainable. In 1867, the United States purchased Alaska for $7.2 million, roughly 2 cents per acre. At the time, the deal was mocked as Seward's Folly, named after Secretary of State William Seward, who negotiated it. The strategic and economic value of Alaska and the Bering Sea wouldn't become clear until much later. Even after the sale, the Bering Sea remained contested. The US and Russia clashed over seal hunting rights in what became known as the Bering Sea Arbitration of 1893. International tribunals eventually set boundaries, but disputes simmered for decades. The maritime boundary wasn't finalized until 1990, more than a century after the Alaska purchase. That line, running roughly north to south through the middle of the sea, still defines US and Russian jurisdiction today. The indigenous peoples of the Bering Sea region, Aleuts, Yupik, Inupiat, and Chukchi, lived in these waters for thousands of years before Russian contact. They hunted whales, seals, and walrus. They navigated ice and storms in skin boats. Their knowledge of the sea was intimate and generational. Russian colonization devastated these communities through disease, forced labor, and cultural destruction. Many traditions were lost. Some survived. Today, indigenous communities continue to fish and hunt in the Bering Sea, maintaining a connection to the water that predates all European maps. Lessons learned about the limits of human ambition in these waters. One of the earliest recorded disasters was the loss of the St. Peter in 1741, the ship that carried Vitus Bering on his final expedition. After reaching Alaska, the vessel was caught in autumn storms on the return voyage. It wrecked on what is now Bering Island in the Commander Islands. Bering and much of his crew died from scurvy and exposure during the winter. The survivors built a smaller vessel from the wreckage and made it back to Kamchatka the following spring. The site remains a grave for those who didn't survive. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, the Bering Sea saw heavy commercial traffic. Whaling ships, sealing vessels, and early fishing fleets all operated in dangerous conditions with limited weather forecasting and no radio communication. Ships frequently disappeared. In 1900, the steam whaler Navok was lost with all hands near St. Lawrence Island. In 1914, the USS Corwin, a revenue cutter that had served for decades patrolling Alaskan waters, was decommissioned and later wrecked off the Aleutians. Many ships from this era rest on the bottom, forgotten except in Maritime. and military craft operated in the region under secrecy. The losses were often concealed. American fishing disasters became more widely documented in the 1980s and 1990s. On February 11, 1983, the fishing vessel Americus sank during a severe storm, killing all 6 crew members. That same storm system damaged multiple other vessels. Just over a month later, on March 23, 1983, the fishing vessel Altair sank, and all 7 crew members perished. The year became a grim marker in Alaska's fishing industry. It prompted new safety regulations, mandatory survival suits, and improved vessel inspections, though enforcement remained inconsistent. In January 2005, the crab fishing vessel Big Valley capsized near St. Paul Island during Opilio crab season. 5 of the 7 crew members died. Only 2 survived after hours in a life raft in near-freezing water. Investigators determined that ice accumulation on the vessel's superstructure contributed to the loss of stability. The tragedy highlighted the persistent danger of winter crab fishing, one of the most hazardous occupations in the world. On March 26, 2017, the fishing vessel Destination sank approximately 2.5 miles northwest of St. George Island in the Pribilofs. All 6 crew members were lost. The vessel went down so quickly that no distress call was made. The Coast Guard investigation concluded that flooding from an unsecured hatch likely caused the sinking. It was a reminder that even with modern technology, small oversights in extreme conditions can be fatal. The wrecks on the seabed are more than historical artifacts. They're evidence of the Bering Sea's unforgiving nature. Some are marked, most are not. Fishing vessels pass over them regularly, often unaware that steel hulls and human remains lie just meters below. The sea does not forgive mistakes. It does not offer second chances. Those who work these waters understand that every trip is a gamble, and the house always wins eventually. The Bering Sea is divided. A maritime boundary runs north to south through its center, splitting the water into American and Russian halves. This line isn't arbitrary. It's the result of more than a century of diplomatic negotiation, territorial disputes, and Cold War tension. It determines who can fish where, who enforces the law, and which nation's flag flies over which patch of ocean. But the line itself is invisible. There are no markers, no fences, no physical signs. It exists only on maps and in the memories of those who navigate these waters. The division began with the Alaska Purchase in 1867. When the United States bought Alaska from Russia for $7.2 million, the deal included waters, but the exact maritime boundaries weren't clearly defined. For decades, this created confusion and conflict, particularly over fishing and sealing rights. Both nations claimed jurisdiction over overlapping areas. Tensions escalated in the 1880s and 1890s as American and Russian sealing fleets clashed. The Bering Sea Arbitration of 1893 attempted to resolve disputes, but it left many questions unanswered. The boundary remained contested. During the Cold War, the maritime border became a flashpoint. Soviet fishing fleets operated close to U.S. waters, and American vessels did the same near Soviet territory. Both nations suspected the other of using fishing boats as spy platforms. U.S. Coast Guard cutters regularly intercepted Soviet trawlers. Russian border patrol vessels did the same to American boats. Confrontations were tense, but generally avoided direct conflict. The boundary wasn't just about fish. It was about sovereignty, military access, and Cold War posturing. A formal agreement finally came in 1990. The United States and the Soviet Union signed a maritime boundary treaty that established the current line. It runs from the Bering Strait in the north southward through the Bering Sea and continues into the Pacific. The boundary follows a series of coordinates that had been proposed decades earlier, but never officially ratified. The treaty was signed just before the Soviet Union collapsed and Russia inherited the agreement. The line has remained in place ever since. The boundary has practical consequences. On the American side, the National Marine Fisheries Service enforces quotas, monitors fishing activity, and patrols for violations. On the Russian side, the Federal Agency for Fisheries does the same. Fishing vessels must stay within their nation's exclusive economic zone, or EEZ. Crossing the line without authorization can result in detention, fines, or confiscation of catch. The U.S. Coast Guard and Russian Border Patrol maintain a presence, watching for incursions. Enforcement is not always consistent, but the boundary is real. There's also a donut hole, an area of international waters surrounded by U.S. and Russian EEZs. In the 1980s and early 1990s, this zone became a free-for-all. Fishing fleets from multiple nations, particularly from Asia, exploited the area with no restrictions. Pollock stocks collapsed. In 1994, an international agreement, the Convention on the Conservation and Management of Pollock Resources in the Central Bering Sea, was signed. It imposed a moratorium on fishing in the donut hole. The ban remains in effect, and the area has slowly begun to recover. Despite the formal boundary, disputes continue. Russia occasionally claims that American vessels stray into its waters. The U.S. accuses Russian trawlers of the same. There are disagreements over scientific data, fish migration patterns, and enforcement priorities. Climate change is shifting where fish populations concentrate, which could complicate future boundary enforcement. The line may be fixed on maps, but the fish don't recognize it. Neither does the ice, the currents, or the storms. The Bering Sea remains divided by politics, but unified by nature.